Hey guys, a bit of a different video this morning with Koopa coming up. Things may change on here, they may not, but we'll probably turn around and man, I look like crap this morning, but it's all right. Things may change on here, and I've always sort of wanted to, and I used to do this, sort of talk about things that may or may not be comic book related. So I woke up, got someone sick in the house, been taking care of them. And with all this time that I've taken off of work for a change, which is amazing considering it's been 4 or 5 years of nonstop work, and it feels like I've been able to sort of sit back and just kind of, look outside and look around and be amazed on what the beautiful weather is we have here in December 27th. And got a new year coming up and a whole new decade. And one of the things I've always talked about out here is we're coming up on a new decade, man. There's going to be a cultural shift. This whole decade's going to have its whole, a whole new identity. And it's just history repeating itself, right? It's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. I feel like it's going to be kind of a hangover. But one of the things that I kind of looked back on that just has amazed me is, staying off of social media versus staying out in the real world are two different places. And being part of YouTube and the pop culture stuff that goes on here. Comic books cross over into movies and books and anything going on. And we've seen a ton of stuff here on YouTube if you really immersed yourself into YouTube. I can make this video, or I can make any video I want, hit, a couple thousand views if I just put SJW in the title or hate on Star Wars and stuff. There's a business out there. And it's like groups with different ideas of how things should be and everything. And it just amazes me that when you consider that YouTube is worldwide, that the views that a lot of these channels get hating on it, some of them hitting 100,000 over, under, whatever and stuff. That's really not a lot of people when you think worldwide and stuff, right? So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about is like there's a dude sitting in his kitchen and he's going to like give me advice on life. Every day of your life is led up to watching this video. And no, that's not what it is. It's actually just me slowing down for a minute and coming to an end of a decade, end of a year, and having some time to think. And I'm like, here's my thoughts on things. And my thoughts mean nothing. They might mean something to some people because they could change tomorrow, next week, or in a year. Hey, what's going on? So one of the things a couple of things that started getting me thinking about this is that it amazed me how being on YouTube for I think 9 years now or something, who knows, that this is a world of its own. This is a bubble. And things leak out in the real world. Sometimes you'll meet people who watch the YouTube, the internet, the Twitter, and it just always amazed me the power that people give social media and the power of a tweet. When a tweet is not the world, it's not America, it's not your neighborhood, it's not your town, it's not even your house, but you watch the news and watch videos and stuff, and there's whole channels dedicated to reporting Twitter news, and people are upset and cancel culture and all this stuff, and it's ridiculous. It's all about power. And then I'm like, we talk about like-minded people when we don't talk about clones and stuff, and the like-minded people here came from the fact that, hey man, there's a lot of us that collected comic books for a long time, but outside of that comic book hobby, we've had lives and drama and divorces and marriages and kids, jobs, school, all sorts of things, memories, nostalgia. Sometimes it's just a break, and you got to ask yourself, who are you? How did you get there? That's one of the things that's always amazed me. But the thing about the internet, that if there's anything that sort of got me going, was it just amazed me how unaware people are of their power, of thinking about things and questioning them. And then I had to wonder, it's like a little rabbit hole. You sort of wonder, how do people get like that? I have an insight, fortunate enough in my life, and I realized that people didn't grow up with me. I have truly had a unique life that, some people will never know about, which is, to know where I'm coming from on these things, right? But there's some heavy stuff that hit when I was a kid, and instead of sort of traumatizing me, it sort of opened my mind, like, we're not here forever. When I was 4 years old, I woke up to a body across the room of a guy who OD'd. So right off the bat, even as a kid, I knew about death. Hey, what's going on, guys? And then as I was growing up, didn't know who my dad was. I had a mean stepdad in the house, but it was also a time where you went outside and played all the time, and you sort of learned life lessons growing up because you interacted with people. I grew up in a town that was a coal mining town, and even though you didn't have the words and we didn't have the internet and things like that, you can walk about it now, but it was really split in two. You had the coal miners and you had the people who didn't work in the mines. So I grew up in a social economical area where it was the poor and the rich. There was no divide in it. That's probably why I like TV shows like The Goonies, or in the movies and stuff like The Outsiders, things about the underdog and all that stuff, right? And all the stores would jack their prices up because they knew they had the money of the coal miners, but they also caused other people who couldn't afford that not to have nice things. Yeah, free thinker, yeah. And but what happened was the mines started going out for different reasons. So throughout the 80s, which is considered one of the most decadent and prosperous times in America and stuff, I got to see unions around here try to form, keep their job, go after people who were considered scabs, and a lot of rich people, rich people start losing everything and kind of flipping out. Also, I'm from the Appalachian Mountains, where people may not realize it, but getting away from where you live and actually reading a book and stuff and seeing the world and then coming home, you kind of get to see that I live in a place where the part of the culture is continued from the Great Depression, even, what are we on, 90 years since all that coming up? 80 to 90 years and stuff, where people are still self-sufficient. They don't go out and just buy new things. They fix what they had. They'll keep the same things forever and things. And where's all this going? What am I talking about and stuff, right? Well, my whole thing is that it seems like, to me, challenges in life really shape who you are, and you either rise above or you hit rock bottom, or you're in between your entire life. So it just really amazes me to see a time where I spent 9 months hitchhiking across the East Coast is what happened. I just needed to get out from where I was. And after that, I had a little bit of a life, then joined the military. But the whole thing I'm saying is that I lived a life where my point of view of the world is I had things in my head that no one else could ever take away from me. I went out and saw the world, saw actual people, not what televisions and news and things told me. I've heard stories of people's lives and stuff while I was doing that. I've been a bartender before, where you might as well be a counselor. I worked in schools for 5 years, where I saw things changing, and now I would push people to have homeschool. It was like an eye opener. I've had eye opener after eye opener in the real world. And it seems like when you get online and social media and stuff, it's like people just hand over their power and believe anything they're told, or join some kind of cause, or they feel like they're part of something. A lot of empty stuff going on, and they're realizing it's not there. So I just couldn't fathom how people just hand over their power to other people, and they don't think, they don't question things. They'll be part of a hate group. They parrot things they say. And I just don't get that. And I really think the last couple of years, it's not news, but it's like masculinity has had the term toxic put in the front of it. And it's almost like it's horrible to be a man. We become the scapegoat for everything bad. When it comes down to, there are good and bad people in this world, and it's not, you can't put everybody under an umbrella. There's good men and good women. That's about it. There's bad people, and there's also people who are kind of in between. We all have good and bad in front of us. Now, with a lot of this, where this came from, one of the things that amazed me, it is a comic book channel, was on Amazon Prime, they had this documentary on 2000 AD. And it's a magazine / comic that's apparently, it's where Judge Dredd came from. Over here in America, I didn't start really hearing about it until the mid 80s with Judge Dredd. But in that documentary, it was amazing how political that the creators, Pat Mills and Neil Gaiman and Brian Boland and a bunch of people, Kevin O'Neill and a bunch of people in that documentary, how starting out in the 70s, it was definitely fused by punk. You know, it was an uprising, social classes over there and stuff. But it just amazed me how political things were in their work, to where the Vertigo comics of the 90s I read was basically just an extension of what was already going on in England. That was like eye-opening to me. Like, I should have seen that. I thought it was like influenced. You know what I mean? Like, these are the same creators that are just doing things a certain way. But Neil Gaiman said something in there about the biggest difference between 2000 AD, the magazine, possibly in comics in England and America, is that in America, we embrace our heroes and trust them. The Superman, Truth, America, and Justice, the American way. But Neil Gaiman said with their heroes, they could find out that they could love somebody and find out that they were being, you know, child diddlers for 50 years and stuff. And that just hit me pretty hard, because here I am setting up this whole video for what I was saying about power and questioning things and stuff like that. And there's this attitude. Is it optimism? Or are they just jaded? How did they get there? And that's the biggest thing that gets me, is that you have to be a free thinker, because you can be around like-minded people, but you'll never know their path. You know, there's all kinds of cliches out there, like walk a mile in my shoes, and you don't know what somebody's going through. And the one that's killing me right now that just makes me roll my eyes is that there's a meme that's been going around for like the last year that I've seen in my little bubble on social media, where it was like, don't raise your kids the way you were raised because the world is different. And I'm like, it's bullshit. I'm like, no, there's fundamentals of raising kids when it comes to rules and authority and finding themselves and not giving up and earning things. I can go on and on and on. Unfortunately, like I said, I'm a social worker with a bachelor's of social work, and you end up getting a broad knowledge in a lot of areas, but nothing in depth. That's how you know how to link people up. They need a psychiatrist or a counselor. You can pick up enough to, that's where you send them and stuff, right? So that's just it. That's why I don't really make a lot of videos too much like this, or not so in your face with it. I've used comic books as a sort of a portal to symbolize things and talk about the world and stuff. But it just amazes me how I can look around and it just really, if there's anything that really bothers me that I can actually feel like it's punching me in the face sometimes, is how people don't know their power and how they can just be followers. It really blows my mind. Let's see what we got here. Ross Sanders, but what if you had weird obsessions or hobbies and hated sports? That's funny. That's just it. That's just it about being your own person. There's things that can be in your head that nobody can ever take away. And my whole idea of these hobbies and the weirdness, worry about being accepted by people, we all want to feel like we're part of something. That's just human nature. I mean, we go back to caveman days, where you lived in a cave with everybody, and if you were exiled on your own, that was a death sentence back then. So that's always going to be there. But, you know, by being your own person and being kind to people and knowing the difference between being opinionated and overbearing versus showing respect for yourself and to other people, you'll get that respect. They'll just be like, yeah, he's eccentric. He's just into odd things. I've never really cared about that. That's where I come into the power thing. That's probably been a strength and a weakness for me. You know, there's no set plan on things being perfect. It's all how you handle the cards that you've been dealt, how you play them. Yeah, not the stereotypes that feed us in the media or contradictions. Ross Sanders said he's from the UK. Charlton 66, it's frustrating when people get their worldview from social media and never experience anything themselves. Yeah, and it's real easy to get on here. A few minutes ago, I touched on how I could make this video blow up by putting keywords, in the title, but it's not an attack. It's more than an observation. When I started hearing about safe spaces, and then I think about what I've been through and how it's had mostly positive and negative. I'm one of the few people can actually say that I meant in real life. I know I'm really close to knowing exactly who I am. There's a piece in that, because part of, unfortunately, being a man, there really is that you really need to decide what you want, who you are, and set goals and take care of things. Now, a lot of people hear that and they're like, whoa, that scares them. It sounds like responsibility. I have unfortunately had responsibility my entire life, and that's had good and bad things, that comes with it. But I think that's what people need to realize is that there are good and bad things in life, but you got to get out there and live life, and stop listening to people at some point. There are times you need to shut up and listen, and there's times where you just got to be able to turn on the bullshit detector and know that what you're hearing is bullshit. Some of the people that I couldn't listen to when I was growing up were the people that didn't have a pot to piss in, and they sat around and they were refugees of the 60s and 70s, and they'd just been in a marijuana haze for 10, 20 years. Why am I going to listen to them? You lead by it's the example of your life is what I'm getting at. You don't have to have a lot of great things. It's not about who gets the biggest toys. And that's why I think is another pitfall is when I don't know, maybe it's a suburban night and you're competing with the Joneses, who's got the bigger car, who's got the, who keeps their yard up the most, who has the most beautiful yard. I don't get that competition. I get taking care of your stuff and having pride in what you have. But one of the, like I said, my life experience is no exaggeration. I lived in a car for 3 months when I was 21. By the time I was 23 months before I turned 27, I ended up buying a house, split level ranch house, real nice house. And what I quickly learned, as crazy as it sounds, is that there's a freedom I had years before that I was a little bit happier about the situation. As crazy as that sounds, because the house ended up owning me. When you grow up and you don't have anything, you move around a lot, and then when you get settled, you ended up learning a new way of living. And I like to take care of my stuff, you know what I mean? But not to the point where it owns you. So it was really odd to be like, I made it, I beat the odds, and you're like, this is it. And that's why I say I've sort of had a unique life. A lot of people would be happy, or that would have felt normal, but that wasn't me. Thus, it goes on to what I'm talking about, how people just kind of hand over their power or stay in situations because of what they're worried about. People have told them that's what you're supposed to do. Nah. What do we got here? Okay, we got a lot of people coming in. Right. Those goons that think stoners have all the insight to life. Right. That's what I mean. So one of the things when I was a kid that kind of, like I said, I'm just sort of reminiscing here about how did I get to this way of thinking. And I kind of really wish people would do that. I think it'd be really cool if a lot of people just kind of stopped and really looked back on things, right? I am blessed / cursed with a very good memory. So I got to kind of make sure that I'm not leaving out certain memories. Like I can remember a moment, but I got to remember what happened before and after that, make sure it's in context and stuff, right? But like I said, some of the things that when I was growing up, the stoners and stuff we were talking about, I've always talked about the 60s being the party, the 70s being the hangover. I was born in the 70s, and I feel like the 70s and the 80s were so different that I had two childhoods up until I was 7, and then the 80s when I was there. And I grew up, if I really look around at it, I grew up in a wasteland of a bunch of burnout hippies. A lot of people came back from Vietnam, and a lot of people that were strung out. I mean, in my little town, you could have went to Pizza Hut and pulled up in the back, and that's where people bought their pot. You know what I mean? There were corner cowboys in front of a pharmacy in the hometown I was in, and there was like 3 generations of them, and that's where people right in the middle of town would pull up and get their stuff, right? So it was prevalent back then, and it was hush-hush back then. And then it was I sort of watched how it kind of took over people's lives, and they wanted, and then as soon as I graduated high school, I had all these people who, some of them I hadn't talked to in years, family, uncles, friends of the stepdads and all this stuff. All of a sudden they're telling me which way to go when I'm 18. And that's when I was like, hey, who are you people? You guys are miserable. And then you get into music. Music, I've always said, I consider music, whether it's pop records or not or anything like that. It used to be to me, it felt like it did more of reflecting what a generation was saying. And of course, we know it probably influenced the younger kids and stuff. But like them or hate them, Green Day probably hit the pulse of a generation more than Nirvana did when they came out with that song where it says, my mom tells me to get a job, but she doesn't like the one you want. And that's a reality. Every time we see people who are older and miserable, what we try to avoid going that way with it. And that's how people are supposed to be. There's a rebellion that you're supposed to have as a kid that I don't see a lot of people having, or it's been misdirected. It's really odd how people can live like that. So then I get offline, or I stop watching things, and I go outside and I see the real world for 3 or 4 days. And then I'm like, these people don't even know what an SJW is. They have no idea what's going on with California and Washington State and all these messes. And now I live in Virginia. All these things that have been happening everywhere else that didn't feel real are starting to get noticed in Virginia down here. And it's going to be really different how Virginia reacts to the other states. And I'm sort of part of that around here, right? And that's what I mean. Life moves, and we're hitting another decade, and things land at your front door. A lot of the things that I've been talking about, seeing how people give up their power and Twitter's not real and stuff, is finally landing at the doorstep. I've always sort of told people that it's not real until it ends up on your doorstep. And then that's where we kind of get into government. And my situation is for once, the things that are going on TV and the things with government and the people that talk about and turn people off, and you get older and, get involved with that stuff, is starting to land at my door. Then we're talking about in Virginia, the Second Amendment right for guns. And I'm in a county that's a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Also, right up the road, what's made the news is a stripper has killed a man and chopped the head off of a person, decapitated them, and they went to jail. And there's been a lot of news coverage in the area I'm in. It's like hitting close to home. And I'm sitting here like, these are important things going on, but my life has led me to a way where I'm not really invested in these things, even though I'm part of this community and probably should be. But the feeling's not there. Is there anything wrong with that? No. But, what do I do? What do I do with my life? Who am I? Is this who I am? I believe in those things. I believe in freedoms and not having people tell you what to do, and having the government be, the whole basis of what way the government was set up is that they're like leave you alone and they do their thing. They're a poison you take a little bit of. It's a necessary poison, but if you drink too much, you end up dying, and it's everywhere. And I just don't understand how people don't understand that nobody knows who they are. There's this elevated sense of importance, delusions of grandeur, if you will. And that really bothers me, because this causes people to think just because they say things, something happens. Or if something happens out there in the real world that affects a whole state, they act like little egocentric kids, like it's just them that's getting attacked. These are the things that bother me when I see people. How did you get here? Have you ever thought for yourself? Did you ever get out of your hometown? And I was talking about masculinity and things. One of the biggest pitfalls I've ever seen, and I still can't put everybody under an umbrella here. One of the biggest pitfalls I've ever seen is when a man goes straight from mom, straight to a wife, and then they expect that wife to mother them, still cook for them and do things. That still happens. And that blows my mind. That blows my mind. Get out there and be somebody. We're not talking about getting out in the real world and then you're 27, 35, 36, whatever things happen, and you have to go back home, for a while to get back on your feet. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who never did it. I've actually seen people in their 30s who have never moved out with their parents. That's a new thing to me, where I'm like, what the hell? Okay. It's whiskey drinkers who have the inside of life. There you go. Bartenders are probably some of the people with the guys who have done it for a while. To me, bartenders have a great philosophy on life and stuff. One of the things I popped in, I've had friends who went in and out of jail. Just to throw it out there, I was with my friends. Everybody thought I was going to be the one going to jail first with some of the ways I acted in my home life. I've fortunately avoided all that, but a lot of those people that said that ended up in jail. And one of them's become like this. He's been in and out of jail so much, he's like this jailhouse philosopher. And it's really odd to listen to him give his opinions on life and situations and stuff, and the way things are looked at. It's really crazy. It all comes from somebody who's lost the rights and have come out, and they see the system, everything, people, the system, attitude a different way. I think he broke when he found out that he ended up spending 5 days in jail because his lawyer decided to go not to cancel the vacation plans and said, I'll be back and get you out. I think that was the beginning step of reality, not actually going to jail. What is the 80s then? Wait a minute. People are commenting on things I've already spoke about here. People where I'm from are ignoring the reality. It is easier to listen to talking heads that they agree with. Ignorance is bliss. Yeah, and it comes to coping skills with your power. That's part of the power of what I'm talking about. Are you able to take in everything, read things, study things, get a comprehensive knowledge to make an informed decision, or are you just listening to one thing? I mean, if you're really going, that's the thing. This is a comic book channel and a movie channel, and I always joke about it. But like, if I want to bash something or talk about it, I at least watch it to see if it's as bad as everybody thinks. I joke about the Twilight movies. I actually went in open-minded on the Twilight movies, and those were crap. And then I ended up doing a little reading here and there and finding out about the author and the Valley Girl mentality and how it was crazy. It was just complete crap. And then I actually looked at the books, and I'm not an editor, but I sit there and went through this book, and I'm like, this is horrendously written. It blows my mind. And that's just what I'm getting at. That's like just a metaphor of what I'm talking about, how people just listen to things. I've had people attack me on Twitter telling me there's problems in the world. And actually my one response was, so you think tweeting from the safety of your home is going to change things? It really blows my mind how people want to do more about complaining and showing off to other people like they're doing something when they don't do anything. They don't do anything. You're not going to change the world through a Twitter. You're going to, you're just wasting your time. If you don't believe me, if you have a Twitter, tell me something you tweeted 6 months ago off the top of your head. Tell me something you tweeted a week ago off the top of your head. And then tell me something you tweeted this morning. Which one do you remember, and do you think other people remember? It's probably going to be none of them. Okay. Learn to live alone and like it, and wait to be willing to share it with someone worthy of your time, and vice versa. And that's the thing. One of the biggest things that people, to me, some of this is just common sense. This is not epiphanies. This is not something I'm pulling out of the air. But the biggest thing I've seen is when I have, to be honest with you, if you see me on Twitter or I've tweeted something, I'm on the toilet. I mean, let's get real. It's because I'm sitting there and I'm just like, okay. And to me, that's the perfect place to be on Twitter. It's exactly where you need to be when you're on Twitter. But one of the things I saw was like a lot of people were talking about being lonely and not finding a girl and not dating and stuff. Well, it's because you're in a state of arrested development. You're still a teenager on the internet playing on Twitter. You haven't gone out and made yourself into anything to where you're going to bring what are you bringing to the table in a relationship. These are common sense things where you've got to be somebody interesting, and it's not that you need somebody, it's that you want them there. And it just blows my mind how people do not get out and do anything physical. They don't get out and have interesting hobbies. They don't really set goals for themselves and work and have money and save up and figure things out. Amazingly enough, you can have the bare necessities and live cheaply. I am somebody who, thanks to divorce and other situations, I've started over probably 4 times since 2005. So I know about living off of $300 a month after bills. I know, I've been dirt poor. I've been in pretty good situations. I've had money. I've done this. I've done that. Yet it seems like the struggles with those money and getting a goal of wanting to do something. The fact that I made it to Lebowski Fest in 2010, for example, and working the money up and things to go like that and partnering up with some people and stuff like that. That's the kind of things that build character. It's all how you act when you're knocked down. Then there's another thing where you just whine around and you think things are going to change because you're whining and complaining and you're just not moving to get anything done. I've been parts of my life where I get about spinning wheels where you feel like nothing's changing. That means you got to figure out what's changing, what you need to change in you. And that's part of life. That's part of finding out who you are and what are you doing. You have to get to that point. You were like, this isn't working, and you have to figure out how to do it. Sometimes people can give you advice. Sometimes you just got to reach down and swallow your fear or swallow your ego and go do it. And you become a better person. There's just like a real lack of character out there. And one of the best things that's ever happened to me is all the time I did spend alone. I wasn't lonely. I was alone. You spend time with yourself. You cook for yourself. The bare necessity, starting from the bottom up, it's like Legos. You start building on that bottom layer of Legos and going up from there. A lot of people don't realize that you can have other hobbies. I've talked about YouTube being a hobby. I've talked about my hiking, kayaking and stuff. Those, I'm not saying people need to go do those things, but it used to, 20 years ago, it used to be camping and bike riding is what I did. You know, always had the outdoors out here for me. The U.S. housing crisis had a major impact on housing prices in Europe. If I tried to move out a year later than I did, I never have been able to do it. My sister's 38 and never moved out. Well, yeah, and seeing that, and that's different. That's economical things out of your control and stuff. You looked up and went for it, and yeah, that's different. We're not talking about people. I'm sort of talking about the people who just sort of get in this state of entitlement and actually just stay being kids. You know, they really don't view themselves as adults. It's really crazy. I won't touch Twitter. I made a profile, spent a day looking around, and never went back. One of the reasons I ended up involved in a lot of social media, even though some of the things I didn't embrace and jump on, is because I did have somebody who was taking the Howler Mouse name and opening up things on Reddit, subreddit. I started finding out that somebody had taken my handle, if you will. So I went around and I put a Howler Mouse thing on anything I could, because there was a little bit of time there where I was getting some weird messages and weird comments in my videos. And it's because it was crossing over. Somebody was saying things, acting like me, and I had no idea what they were talking about. So that's how I ended up getting involved in all this stuff. Ramen noodles. There we go. In 2 words, somebody gets exactly what I'm talking about. When you hit the ramen noodles, that's when you know you have nowhere to go but up. You have to live a hard life. Me too, Dennis Hayes, to want to get out. Living a soft life with parents that do everything makes you soft to ruin your work ethic. See, and that's just it. There are people who are, one of the biggest things that I can say that I had to learn about myself was I really didn't, I know where it came from, but I really had this thing about rich versus poor. And then something very strange happened to me. I ended up not around rich people, but wealthy people. I ended up around some very wealthy people who were very nice, well-rounded kids, sort of down to earth. And it just blew my mind, changed my whole viewpoint on things, made me question my things, part of that journey into being who I am and stuff, right? And it just blew my mind. Like, how can you be rich and be this grounded and have kids that have got their shit together and stuff like that? I had never seen that before, you know. So it just kind of made me realize that there's a whole world out there. Now I'm gonna go ahead and mention the touchy thing here, but when I was growing up, it's a very church-oriented community. And there's a church called the Tabernacle, which can be described more of a cult than a religion. And these people are the ones that never cut their hair. They wore skirts down to their ankles. When they went out to eat, all the women sat at tables by themselves and all the men sat over here, and they were just being very pompous and obtuse and stuff. And they ran the show. And if there was ever a patriarchy, it was in this church, and they still do this. This is what they still do. They still exist. And I was probably like 10 years old going, how in the world can these people, and they didn't have televisions. They were not allowed to have televisions in their houses at that time. And they had their own school. But I think I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, somewhere around there. I remember where I was living. But I questioned this. I was like, how in the world can these people who live up here in the mountains and live in this little bubble and don't even know what's going on in this town, how can they have all the answers for the entire world and judge people like in other continents like Africa and Asia and stuff like that? I had these thoughts when I was little, and that's probably one of the reasons I didn't get any of those trappings of small-minded thinking, of realizing there's a whole world out there. I didn't know what was out there, but I knew something was out there, and this cannot be the answer. These are the things you have to question and think about. If I ever picked a church to go to, it'd probably be Lutheran. I was in the military and ended up going to a Lutheran church, and that felt comfortable, not this tabernacle and Protestant stuff and stuff like that. Not putting those down, but that's the perfect thing of what I'm talking about here. I think I could end up doing a whole video on ramen noodles, was everything was talking about. But that's just kind of wraps this up a little bit. I have someone sick here, so I need to get ready to cook for them and stuff. But that's kind of gets me. I mean, slow down, take a look at who you are, what's working. Are you happy? Do you question things? And kind of realize that you can't really change other people. Now, why am I bringing that up when it's like who you are, free thinking and things like that? Part of your journey is the only person that you can really control what happens around you and what goes on in your head is you. And this is where it comes into, do you cut other people out of your life? Who do you have around you? Are they affecting you? Do you spend enough time by yourself? One of the things that I can say about me is that there's times I'm a horrible friend, but I at least acknowledge it and talk it to people because I try not to spend my life on the phone messaging. I'm one of those people that if we have messaged more than 3 times, we need to go ahead and just talk on the phone. Or you are messaging me when I'm driving, or you're messaging me when I'm at work. And I will make an effort every now and then to be like, hey, I'm working or something like that. But the reason I do that is that it's taking care of myself. And I don't just assume people know that, but I will acknowledge it and talk about it and bring it up. And I know that that seems very considerate in the day and age of this, but it works for me. I was one of those people that would freak out and immediately want to message people back when it was texting before Messenger and stuff. And I learned I fought the whole idea of a cell phone. I mean, I don't care if it sounds old fashioned or what's going on. They're here. They're not going anywhere. I have one, but it's just like when I own that house, I don't let it own me. And that's the kind of thing I think people need to look at. There's quiet times, and it's okay not to be on the phone all the time. But there are people who actually freak out. And I've seen people wake up and rise up at 3 a.m. to make sure that they're messaging somebody, really freaking out. And I was one of those people way back in the day when I first got the cell phone. It's little things like that it's all how you come across to other people and what works for you. I can't change the fact that people love messaging more than talking. I can't change the fact that people look at you very odd and weird, and this is the one thing they'll judge you on and stuff like that. That's just how the world is. It's the fact that there are consequences for your actions, and it's real easy for you to say, I can deal with those, or I can't deal with those, or I'm just going to have a grown-up talk. I'm going to go to a show called Friends for a minute and wrap this up, right? I want to tell you why I'm one of the few people, apparently it looks like, that I do not like the show Friends. They have 3 or 4 episodes that made me laugh. They've had 3 or 4 little parts there with Joey that made me laugh. But if you go back and watch the show, is that they're all wrapped up in each other to the point where a lot of the plots are them worrying about what other people think, their friends, and all they do is lie to each other. A lot of those plots are them lying to each other and then trying to cover up the lie. Okay? It's just a TV show. Okay? It's just a TV show, man. And the fact that they've all ended up sleeping with each other, whatever. But it's the fact that they lie to each other and stuff, right? And to me, I think that show was a hit because that's what a lot of people really do. Are you living a life to where you feel like you have to lie and cover up things when you really don't owe people an explanation? You know what I mean? And this goes into people wanting to, and I'm gonna go there, man. This goes out to people wanting to put out their sexuality and things like that, right? That a lot, and if people in the real world and grown-ups do not care, because if anybody, a stranger, walked up to me and told me who they had sex with and how they had sex with them, I would think this person is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, that is none of my business. But look at this kind of think of like some television shows and look at them. I mean, TV tries to tell you what to do anyway and tries to shape you and all that stuff like that. It's a marketing. They want your money in advertisements. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. That's why we have television. But yeah, just look at the show Friends and how much they worry about what each other think, and they really held each. If that was the real world, this is what holds people back, being afraid of what people think. You know what I mean? Thinking you know everybody an explanation. Nah, man, I'm one of those people that when I have a handful of actual friends, and I do sometimes go out of my way to explain things, but I don't explain myself to them. You know what I mean? And I don't expect them to do that with me. So I think it's all about respect. Have respect for yourself. Know who you are. Question things. Do you think for yourself? And always remember, you're an individual just like everybody else. Okay. Later, guys. Thanks for popping in here, man. Just sharing some thoughts. Bye, guys.